Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 9th of September 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comments. Coming up in the show, the spiritual successor to Homeworld by the name of Hardware Shipbreakers gets access to the Homeworld IP. Reports that Sony is developing a VR headset and will be showing it behind closed doors at the Tokyo Game Show. And I know it's a little late, but I was at PAX, I didn't have the chance, so Steam Greenlights 100 new titles. We'll have a look through that and pick out some of the more notable ones a little bit later on the show. All this in the OC Remix track of the day is coming your way right about now. A little while ago, there was an announcement for a game by the name of Hardware Shipbreakers, which was interesting to say the least. It was a spiritual successor to Homeworld, but it was based on the ground, so a little bit weird, a little bit different there, and developed by Blackbird Interactive. However, there's been a couple of interesting developments with this title over the last few days. The first one being that Gearbox has actually signed a deal with Blackbird in order to essentially lend them the Homeworld IP, which means that the game is now called Homeworld Shipbreakers. It would appear that Gearbox will also be providing some support in the form of resources, although exactly what that means remains to be seen. It would appear that some financial support is being offered here by Gearbox, but I'm not 100% sure as to how much and in what particular respect. When this was announced, Randy Pitchford spoke to Polygon on the issue and said that these guys have been funded by private equity, but it's clear it's going to take many millions of dollars more. We're giving them the brand and the resources to make this happen, and now these guys are cooking with the money they have. They can grow the team. So we would certainly expect Gearbox to be shoveling money at this. The question, I suppose, then becomes, what's the trade for that? Rob Cunningham is the CEO of Blackbird and stated that we wanted the project to live and grow. We didn't want it to go to a publisher that would let it die, so we reached out to Gearbox, congratulated them for winning the IP, which they of course acquired in May for $1.35 million as part of the THQ bankruptcy auction, and that ended up turning into a friendship. The deal was apparently signed at PAX, and as a result, this is now what we have. Gearbox have also announced that they will be releasing classic versions of Homeworld 1 and 2, presumably versions that actually run properly on Windows 7 and 8 machines, and is also working on a series of HD remakes for the titles as well. Now, the follow-up announcement from this very recently is that as a direct result of this investment, Homeworld Shipbreakers is not going to be a free-to-play title. Specifically, Randy Pitchford said, with our investment, Homeworld Shipbreakers can be a proper commercial release and there's no need for free-to-play. This has, of course, been met with mixed response. A lot of people have said that that's a very positive thing. Others, especially those that invested in the initial starter packages, are a little bit confused as to what exactly is going to end up happening to them there. But we'll see where that one goes. So, there's a number of different topics to cover on the subject of Homeworld, and this is a game that I like to talk about because it is a game that I enjoyed all three iterations of. I still think that Cataclysm was the best one, but hey, I guess that's probably just me. Anyway, firstly, the idea of moving away from free-to-play. I don't really see a problem with that. We are still talking about a real-time strategy here. We have, as of yet, not seen a successful real-time strategy with the free-to-play model, and frankly, it's difficult to pull it off. There are some games working on that idea, and there are, of course, some smaller titles that have tried it, but nothing that's been a gigantic success. And there's a reason why the only strategy game that's still kind of dominant on the market is currently StarCraft 2, with EA working on Command & Conquer with BioWare Victory. The question, I suppose, is, could you even turn an RTS into a free-to-play title without compromising the competitive nature of it and without making it pay to win? It's very, very difficult, even more so than, say, a Dota-style game. At least in that respect, if you're offering a small pool of heroes and sort of either selling more heroes or allowing to earn them over time, that stuff you do have access to is theoretically still balanced properly, so you're still going to be able to use it effectively. And that's a good thing. That's a very good thing indeed. But when you look at a real-time strategy where it's more than one unit that you have to be playing with, and then you say, well, we're going to give you these units if you pay or you earn them, and then things just become nightmarish. You can't really split off the map pool either because, you know, again, you're splitting the community, which is pretty stupid. You're left really with only the cosmetic options, and if you put too much of this leveling up progression nonsense in, you actually poison the strategy game as it stands. And frankly, I think the best example of that, even though it wasn't free to play, is probably Command & Conquer 4, which was a goddamn disaster as a direct result of trying to adopt that progression-based stuff through RTS. It just doesn't work in multiplayer. You cannot pull that off. So I'm pretty glad that this will not be a free-to-play title. This also may mean that we will be seeing kind of a full campaign, which I'm quite excited about. Obviously, I played and completed all of the campaigns for Homeworld games in the past, and they were all pretty damn good. They are surprisingly story-driven, so it would be disappointing if we didn't see that from Homeworld Shipbreakers. And of course, I like the idea of a Homeworld-style game, but on the ground. Yeah, that's kind of cool. As much as I would like to see Homeworld 3, which hopefully we eventually will, admittedly in what form remains to be seen, this is a pretty good start. That's the argument, I suppose, against free-to-play when it comes to RTS. And frankly, we are also getting to this point, and I've mentioned this before, where free-to-play is now such a ubiquitous business model that it's becoming problematic for gamers to keep up with, because almost all of those games are based on these very gradual progression mechanics. And those of us that like to play a lot of games are getting really pissed off with that. This is not, of course, the only business model that's doing it. It's happening in full $60 titles as well. I am not looking forward to November, where we have a bunch of FPS that come out which have exactly the same damn thing in them. Battlefield 4, Call of Duty Ghosts. I would imagine Killzone has something along those lines in there, so if you happen to be playing on PS4, that's a third title. The problem with that model is it takes a long time to get the fullest out of the game, and until that point you feel gimped and restricted, which is not really what you want. For those of us that don't just play Call of Duty all year round, or don't just play League of Legends all year round, it can get very frustrating to buy a game, want to jump into the multiplayer, and realize that the time investment required to get the most out of it is going to be so high that you don't really have the time to play the other games that you want to experience. And the cynical part of me, which is large and in charge and very scary, says that this is deliberate. And it is designed to make sure that people will stick with your game and will be able to treat your game as a service platform where content is consistently drip-fed to you, and I believe that's exactly the reason why we currently have the 4 map pack season pass DLC culture that has infected pretty much every multiplayer FPS over the last 5 years. So, moving away from that model seems good. That doesn't mean, of course, that it won't be laden with DLC. That's very, very possible. It is now, to some degree, a Gearbox game. They are very willing to put down DLC and have been doing so fairly consistently for the past few years, but we'll see where that goes. It's pretty cool that they did allow them to use the Homeworld IP. That does make a certain degree of sense, and hopefully it means the investment will allow for the best quality game that we could possibly get out of this. Also, we are talking about Gearbox essentially investing in a PC game. That's kind of neat. They haven't really been doing that for a long time, so as much as I dislike Gearbox's behavior surrounding stuff like Aliens, Colonial Marines, I think that this is a positive step forward. There have been an awful lot of murmurings over the last couple of months about a possible Sony-developed VR headset. GamesIndustry.biz cites various anonymous sources on the subject, and a follow-up to that seems to indicate that we are expecting this particular device to be shown behind closed doors at the Tokyo Game Show. It was expected to be shown at Gamescom, but apparently this did not actually happen, and they're looking, if this report is to be believed, at an autumn 2014 release. The headset itself has been touted by said sources as being more accurate than the Oculus Rift as a result of combining it with the PlayStation Eye to use for head tracking, as opposed to, say, the Oculus Rift, which does not have an external device to use as a reference. Whether this also means that the headset will have an obnoxious, brightly colored blue ball on the front of it, well, that also remains to be seen. Well, the rumors don't really mean an awful lot as far as I'm concerned. If these turn out to be untrue, I feel that it would only be a matter of time before these companies go into it anyway. With the Oculus Rift driving so much attention right now and VR kind of being the next big thing in gaming, and it also being practical and useful as opposed to, say, 3D, which most assuredly was not, it makes perfect sense that a company like Sony, who happen to be very experienced when it comes to the development of displays, would be interested in developing their own version of VR. It also concerns me to some degree that we would have a lot of competing formats for VR. It seems unlikely that an Oculus Rift would be compatible with a PlayStation 4 later down the line if Sony decided to develop their own piece of kit for that, especially considering the head tracking would be reliant on an external device, whereas the Oculus Rift doesn't work that way. That said, it would also be completely unreasonable for companies like Sony and Microsoft to necessarily rely on a third-party company, especially one that was driven an awful lot by Kickstarter funds, to develop the next big thing in gaming. They'd want to be the guys that actually did that to some degree. Obviously, we expect the Oculus Rift to be out before this thing, but let's be frank, VR is going to be the next big thing in gaming, and there's really nothing you can do to stop it, and quite frankly, I don't see why you'd want to. It is not 3D. Now that I've used an Oculus Rift, I fully understand exactly where this is going. This is not 3D. This is a fully immersive experience. This is something that can be easily adapted in a way that makes sense to modern titles. It is something that can be used for a wide variety of different functions, and also once it's properly balanced and focused, could be comfortably used for long periods of time in traditional gaming applications. Based on my experience with the Oculus Rift HD prototype, all I can really say is, unless there is some, like, physical or practical reason why you wouldn't, there's no reason not to play something like Hawken or anything without a VR headset. There's no reason not to. It's just better. It is just flat out better across the board. Yes, it'll take some getting used to, there's no real question about that, but it is just a better gaming experience. I am certainly a believer. I've used it, I've experienced how immersive it is, I've experienced the amount of depth that you can see in a scene that you can't even see even a fraction of with consumer 3D, and you certainly can't see it with a traditional 2D monitor. It is unbelievably immersive, and it is most assuredly a positive step forward. I cannot see any other way of looking at it. Like, there are so few downsides that I can think of when it comes to these VR applications right now. Yep, I'm thoroughly on the hype train, and apparently everybody else is too, so yeah, we'll see how this goes. I'm not going to say that it's a bad thing that other companies are developing it. The Oculus Rift might not end up being the best option in the long run for VR. It might not. I played it, I liked it, but who knows? Someone might be able to do it better. I just like the idea that VR is being seriously pursued now by multiple companies with large sacks of cash. That's probably a good thing for everybody. And finally, Valve just basically said screw it and greenlighted 100 games at once, which is an absolutely massive amount. Thankfully, these games are not all coming out at the same time. If they were, this would have been the stupidest thing in the history of Valve. However, this is not the case, and of course, these will be coming out over a number of months. So, we're going to go down the list, and we're going to pick out a few games that I've either had the chance to play, or I just believe are worth looking at. I apologize if I've missed your game. I don't know every game ever, as much as I would like to. Artemis Bridge Simulator is making its way to Steam. That's kind of a weird choice, but it's nice that this game is actually getting attention. A super niche title in the form of a game which allows you to simulate a starship bridge with multiple computers and multiple people sitting at all of them, which is what makes it a little bit difficult. Could a version be done online? Potentially. I mean, it's designed to be done with LAN, so you could certainly tunnel it with Hamachi or something along those lines, but I don't think it would be anywhere near as fun or effective. But it's cool to actually see it get on Steam nonetheless. Delver's Drop finally managed to make it through. I'm really surprised it took this long, frankly. Delver's Drop had a lot of support behind it, very much a kind of colorful roguelike-esque physics-based RPG is what they like to call it, and I did an early look at this at a previous PAX, and, you know, it was pretty good for what it was. It had a nice graphic style, of course, very much a kick-started game, so that's going to be worth having a look at. Admittedly, by the time it does come out, it might end up being in a rather saturated genre, as these kind of roguelite titles are becoming very, very frequent, it would seem. The use of roguelike style mechanics does appear to be the next big thing. Depth Hunter is coming to Steam. Finally, the premier spearfishing simulator will be available. Dominions 3. Geez, talk about a game that's been around for a while. That was released in 2006. It is, for the most part, considered to be a really, really good game. Yeah, absolutely massive strategy title, but unfortunately, it hasn't had a large amount of commercial success. You know, it's very much flown under the radar. It's a niche title, but getting it on Steam We'll see where it goes. That could be interesting. Hoodwink is a game that I believe we watched the trailer for and we actually enjoyed a lot. Unfortunately, it turns out the game was actually dreadful. The game was panned across the board when it came out earlier this year. Yeah, it was not good. Not good at all. So that's a bit unfortunate, but it is something that you may remember from a previous Game Station podcast. We've got Knit Underground, which is a fairly highly rated puzzle platformer. Really interesting, unique art style. Actually came out on the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita a little while ago, so that one's worth looking into if it happens to be a genre you particularly enjoy. Megabyte Punch has managed to make its way through. That's getting a reasonable amount of hype right now. It is a customizable robot kind of brawler. It's interesting. I do have code for this. I need to look into it. I'm getting around to it. I promise. I've got so much to do right now. Paranormal Activity, yes, it finally made it somehow, some way. The early access version is now available on Steam. I will be taking a look at that at some point. It is a roguelite first-person shooter with a fairly blocky graphic style. Raise the Dead, I checked this out. It's kind of like Pikmin with zombies. It was a pretty solid title, nice graphic style on it, good sense of humor. So that is certainly going to be worth having a look at. Risk of Rain, also been getting a reasonable amount of hype up to this point. Fitting in with the theme of this year, it is an action platformer with randomized elements. So a little bit of roguelite, a little bit procedural generation in there. This, I believe, will be a premium version of the otherwise free beta that was available there. Road Redemption, that is a spiritual successor to a game by the name of Road Rash. You can probably remember that. I certainly hope so. Here's hoping this doesn't suck because I miss Road Rash an awful lot. Silent Storm finally managed to make its way onto Steam. That took a while, didn't it? And Super Amazing Wagon Adventure, which is obviously Game of the Year all years. Talisman Digital Edition. Yes, it is finally the proper version of Talisman, not that single-player one. I do need to have another look at that one. Talisman is a pretty fun game, but it has a tendency of dragging on, so we'll see where that one goes. And also, you will be seeing War Machine Tactics. Yes, indeed. War Machine Tactics, which got recently kickstarted for an absurd amount of money and is actually looking really, really solid indeed. There's like 100 titles. I can't cover them all. Please do go and have a look at the list. It's in the description below this video. All right, folks, that wraps me up for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch. I'd like to, of course, remind you, I've got loads more PAX coverage of great games coming in. The vast majority of this is direct feed, post-commentated stuff, so no devs, no noise, no bad production values, no dishonest opinions, or whatever it is you want to hear. So yeah, bunch of good stuff. Please do watch it. Very much appreciated. I would like to give you the OC Remix track of the day. Please let me give you the OC Remix track of the day. I'm just gonna give it to you anyway. That's probably the best idea. We need more jazz. We do not have enough jazz on this show, so let's fix that, shall we, with a Chrono Trigger remix. And what a Chrono Trigger remix is this? It is a very, very good one. It is remixed by LSD and Shnabubula. Look, if you are going to write your name that way, don't expect me to get it right. Yes, it is the song Chrono Trigger. And it should be a very well-known theme, certainly, but you have not heard it like this. No, no, no. This is a really, really nice piano jazz version. It's phenomenally good. It's so good. I think it's one of the best tracks on OC Remix right now, so please do listen to it and download it in the description below this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.